Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate this composite in Photoshop. If you'd like to follow along, I have included all the assets that I use in a link in the description of this video, so go ahead, download those, and then let's dive into Photoshop. Alright, let's start by going to File, Open, and we're going to open this Aussie model in the Assets folder. This is going to open in Camera Raw because a DNG file is a digital negative and it needs to go through Camera Raw before opening in Photoshop. Here, if we go to the three dots and say Reset to Default, you'll see that the original photo is pretty dark, so we're going to brighten that up. Now we can do that here in the Basic tab with the exposure. If we just start pushing that up to the right, you can see we're getting more dynamic range across the image. Now if we push it too much, our highlights are blowing out, we're losing detail. So we're going to want to push it back, and then so right about there I'm having nice detail in my highlights, although my darks are still a little bit too dark for my liking. So I'm just going to take the shadows and push those up a bit. You can see now I'm getting a little more detail in my dark areas. And the other thing I can do also is just push the exposure up a little more, but then take the highlights down, just so we get a little bit more dynamic range. And I think that's pretty nice, getting a good distinction between the foreground and the background. I do, however, want to keep this as a Camera Raw file because I may just increase the exposure a little bit more so that Photoshop has an easier time selecting her from the background, and then I can go back and make it dark again after I've created my mask. So to make sure this opens as a smart object in Photoshop, I'm going to click on this link down here. And in my preferences, I want to click on this right here, Open in Photoshop as Smart Object. I also want to make sure here that I'm on 16-bit. Let's hit OK, and then let's click on Open Object. You can see here we now have our object. I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of this. And here I'm going to go to any of my selection tools, or actually I can just go straight into the Select and Mask workspace. Here under Select Subject, if you're using the latest version of Photoshop, you'll notice that it has this option. You can either use the AI engine that's on the device, or you can use the Cloud AI engine, which will give you better results. So for this, I'm going to use the Cloud Detailed and then click on Select Subject. That is going to make a selection of our person using the artificial intelligence. You can see that that's done a really good job of cutting her out of the background. If we zoom in here, there really is not much that I need to do. So for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to scroll down here, say New Layer with Layer Comp, and hit OK. And here you can see it's actually rasterized the smart object and created this mask. I want the smart object to still be smart, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this layer back on and just drag this mask onto this layer and throw away a rasterized copy. I can change this to model. Now I want to recrop this so that it is a format for Instagram. So let's go to our crop tool. I want to put this on 4:5, and then I'm just going to drag this up so that she's contained within our image, and then maybe just expand it out a little bit on the right side here, maybe down a little bit too. So something like this. Kind of want her centered up in the frame, and I want it to be 4:5. Let's hit OK. All right, and then I'm going to option click on this mask. You can see now that we've expanded it, our mask doesn't fully contain her. So if I go on to my gradient tool, I want it on foreground to transparent, hit OK, make sure we're on linear, which is this first little one here, and then just holding down Shift to make sure I stay straight, I'm going to go within the black and just paint out the black on either side there. If I option click on the mask and get back to my normal view, next thing I'm going to do is just build up a background behind this. Basically going to create a virtual photo backdrop. So let's start with a solid color. And for this, I'm going to use the color of the existing background. So if we turn this off, and actually a better way to create a solid color layer is to select your color first, because whatever your foreground color is what this solid color layer is going to be. So we're on our gradient tool, so if we hold down option, it's going to give us the eyedropper. I'm going to select this background color here and then go to solid color. All right, and I want this to be pure neutral. You can tell right now it's a little bit too red. So I'm just going to push this toward neutral and then hit OK. Next, I want to create a little bit of vignetting. So let's go ahead and go to our elliptical marquee tool. This is kind of my favorite way of creating vignettes, and that's to create a circle around our subject, so something like this. And then I'm going to go here and create a curve layer. Now you'll see that the mask is curving, or sorry, is making the inside visible instead of the outside. And there's a reason we're doing it this way, and I'll show you in 1 second what that reason is. So I'm just going to make this quite a bit darker, and then if I click on this properties for the mask right here, I can add feather and I can also invert it. Now the reason I want this inverted is because now, even after I've added all this feathering, if I have my mask selected and do a transform with Command T, what I'm transforming is my original white shape, which I can then make bigger or smaller, or even change the basic shape of. And because the feather is happening afterwards, it's just going to apply that to my new shape. Okay, so this is our vignette. Let's go ahead and name our layer here, and this is our background. And then I think we can also add, well, first let's make this just a little smaller, like that. And then I think we can make this not quite as strong, and then add a second one, which will be the outer edges. And for this one, I'm going to make it quite a bit bigger, so it's just on the outer edges, like that. Okay, so that's our vignette. The other thing I want to do for my background is add just a little bit of texture to it. I'm going to go to my Nucly libraries, well, I should say my Adobe libraries, but where I have all my Nucly packs. And I'm going to go to my grunge pack here. And I'll include the specific overlay or the overlays that I use in the assets if you don't have the Nucly grunge pack. So here, I'll grab this one, Nucly grunge 12, put that in here, do this, and just stretch this to fit the background, something like this. And I want this to be neutral, so a couple things I have to do. First, I'm going to do Command U, and that's going to bring up hue saturation. I can just take the saturation down. Next, if I do Command M, that's going to bring up my curve. Now, when you're dealing with a kind of a neutral background like this, the center of this middle stack represents neutral gray. So if I'm going to adjust this, I want to move this line where it intersects right in the middle there. I want to move that so it's right about in the middle of this histogram stack, and that's going to make my grays neutral. So when I put this on either overlay or soft light, it's not changing the luminosity of the background. All it's doing is adding texture to it, meaning it's not making the background lighter or darker. And the reason for that is this curve. If I turn this curve off, you'll notice that this is making the background lighter. So that's a trick when you're working with overlays. Make sure that this line right here, when it crosses the center line, is in the middle of your histogram stack. Okay, And then also another trick here is if you want your background or your overlay to be more contrasty, you can also move this closer, but just make sure that the center of this line here is always in the center of this histogram stack as you move both of them in. So like this. Again, you can see this is way more contrasty, but it's not changing the overall luminosity of our background. Now I don't want it this contrasty, so I'm going to hit cancel. In fact, I don't even want it this contrasty, so I'm going to take the fill down until it's just a subtle hint. So something like this. And then I'm also going to take just one more, kind of want to give it a painted background look. So I'm going to take this one, Nucly Grunge 15, I'll raise this up. For this one, I'm going to leave the color. It's kind of neutral-ish, so that's fine, but I am going to do Command M and just move this so that my line here is in the center of my histogram stack, which you can see is just a little bit right of the center. So there you go. And then we're going to put this on soft light as well and take down the fill until it's just a hint. And then finally, I want one more grunge layer that is a little more painted looking. So let's go here. Maybe we take this Nucly Grunge 18. And for this one, it does have too much color, so I'm going to do Command U, take that down to 0, do Command M. Now this one has a much larger histogram stack, but even so, you can see it's kind of leaning toward the right. I would say this is the center, so I want this diagonal line to cross right about there. So I'm just going to move this until it crosses in that section there. All right, then we're going to put this on soft light and take the fill down until it's also just a hint of it. Okay, so pretty happy with that. The next thing we're going to do is start creating our glow lines around her. I am going to do some cleaning up on her, and in terms of sequence, I could do it before or after. But I think I'm going to do that after, because once I put my lines in place, I'll know which are the important parts to clean up and which aren't as important. So to create the lines, I'm going to first start with some paths, and then we're going to turn those paths into our lines. So let's create a new layer. We're going to call this Glow Lines. For now, it's just going to stay an empty layer. I'm also going to take everything that is creating our background, which is these layers here. I'm going to put them in a folder and call this backdrop. Okay, then with my glow line selected, I'm going to go here and select the ellipse tool. And I want to change this to path. And then I'm just going to create kind of an oval around her. So something like this. And you'll notice that it immediately puts it in a free transform. This is somewhat new behavior. I don't believe that this used to be the behavior. But there it is. We can go here now, and what I'm going to do is I actually want to pull in this part just to make it look a little bit more perspectively correct. So to do that, I'm going to go on this anchor point here, hold down Command, and then start dragging this to the right. And then if I hold down, which other one is it? 1 second. I'm going to cancel out of this. Okay, so there it is. Shift, Option, and Command. That'll pull in both sides at the same time. So Shift, Option, and Command, or Shift, Control, Alt on a PC. So like this. I'm going to say yes. And now this is just a little bit more perspectively correct. Next, I'm going to do transform again. Make it a little bit less tall. And then we're going to move this, kind of just shape it a little bit. So something like this. And I kind of want it above her eye there. Something like this. I think something like that looks good. Okay, then I'm going to hold down Option. That allows me to make a copy. And here I'm on the Path Select tool. And I can drag this down. And that's made a copy of my path. I'm going to do Command T for transform. Turn this one and kind of make these intersect a little bit like this. And then Option, drag this again. We'll do it again one more time. Something like this. And then last one, make a little bit bigger too. Okay, so those are our glow lines. Now we're going to turn them into actual lines. To do that, I'm going to go onto my brush and first set my brush how I want it. I'm going to make the brush color white. Right mouse click here, and I'm going to take this down to 25 pixels, and I'm going to take the hardness up to 90. So that'll give me what I want. Next thing I'm going to do here is select the first one. So I'm going to go back onto this tool, select the first one, make sure I'm just selecting the first one, and then I'm going to go to Path, and you'll notice this thing here. So this will fill your path, this will stroke your path, this will turn your path into a selection. So I want to do the stroke. I'm going to click on that. Got to make sure my brush is selected so it knows what to stroke it with, and then I'm going to stroke it, so like that. Now let's see how it looks, and you can see it doesn't look great, and I think that's because my flow is set to 20. Let's try this again with my flow set to 100. So again, make sure I'm on my glow lines layer. In here in paths, I want to select just this first one, go onto my brush tool and click on this. And now it's getting me the result that I want. I'm also going to change the name of this work path. One thing to be aware of is if you have a work path, it's basically a temporary layer. If I don't have it selected and I start making a new path, it's going to replace it. So let's Command Z, but the way to save it is just name it. And you can name it whatever you want. You can leave it the default name. Then if you start creating a new one, it'll create a new work path and it won't overwrite the one you have. Okay, so we'll call these glow lines. And before I do the rest, I want to create a mask on this and start building our mask. So let's add a mask. We're going to do that just clicking on the mask icon. And then I'm going to hold down Command and click on my model mask. That'll put it into my selection. And then just with my brush tool, I just have to remember here that my brush size was 25 with 90 hardness, because we're going to go back and do the other lines and we're going to need that brush. So for now I can make my brush a little bit bigger. I want to make sure it's on black. I'm going to paint out here so that it's just in front of her here and then goes behind her in the back. So we get the impression that she's in the middle of this line here. Okay, I'm going to do Command D to drop my selection. Make sure right now I have the mask selected. You can see that with the bright lines there. I want to make sure my layer is now selected. I'm going to go back to Paths, back to my Path Selection tool, and the shortcut for that is A. So we're just going to use the shortcut, hit A, select this one, hit B for the brush shortcut, right mouse click, change this back to 25, and then hit this button there. And let's go back to our layers, back to our mask, load this one, and do the same thing. Just going to paint out here. Oops. Paint out here where it's going in front. And in this one, I want it to come in front downwards, so just painting it out like that. So that looks good to me. Let's do Command D, and let's select our glow layer again, go back to paths, hit A, select the next one, hit B, right mouse click, 25 pixels, and there you go. All right, and then we'll do our masking here. Again, Command click on that. And for this one, I want it to be erased in front here. Oops. Now I have to be careful because I don't want the other one to disappear. So I think what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to do Command Z. Yeah, trying to overpaint this is going to be really complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put this new glow line on its own layer, and then we'll merge it into this. So let's go back to paths, select this, go B, 25, basically the same drill, but now it's on its own layer. I'm going to, if you have the path selected and you want to deselect it, you can just click outside of the path area. And here I'm going to add a mask again, do the same thing, but because it's on its own layer, it's not also painting out the other one here. There you go. Okay, and then last one, let's go, I'm going to select back to this one. Actually, let's see how they intersect. So they do intersect here and here. I think I might just have to make another layer and then we'll merge all of them at the end. So let's go here, go A, select our last circle there, go back to B, change our brush to 25, and then let's click on that. And then let's do our masking here. We're going to add the mask, load that selection, and then paint out where it goes in front of her. So like this. Okay, so we now have her positioned. I don't know why I'm getting this square there. Looks like we have some kind of an issue with Photoshop. Don't know why that is. I don't think it likes all these. Oh, that's the issue right there. Look at that. Okay. All right, so that's obviously a bug in Photoshop. We're going to pretend we didn't see that. All right, next, let's go to our lines here. Before I merge these, I kind of would like the lines to get a little bit thicker on the edges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. I'm going to unlink the mask so that the mask stays in place. And then I'm going to command click on this layer so that I've selected the actual pixels. And then holding down Option, I'm going to kind of drag this a little bit like this. And what that's going to do is it's just going to make it a little bit wider on these outer edges, which if we perceive it almost like a disc, that's what would happen. And then we'll do it on this layer as well. Let's just add a little bit of realism to it. Oh, something like that. That looks cool. And then we'll do the same with these. All right, just so we have some variation in thickness on these, they don't look so, you know, single thick. There's some variation there. So I'm happy with all these glow lines. I'm going to put them all in a smart object, and we'll call these glow lines. And here we're going to start adding some effects to these. And to do that, I'm going to use layer effects. So here I'm going to go to drop shadow. And the reason I'm using drop shadow is because drop shadow is one that I can duplicate, whereas outer glow I can only have one iteration of it. Now, before I do anything else here, I do see I have like multiple gradient overlays. I kind of just want to reset this. So I'm going to go down here and go reset to default list. That'll just clean up my list here. And let's go back to drop shadow. I want this to be, I'm going to reset to default again. I'm going to put this on screen so it's creating a light instead of darkness. And then I'm going to change the color to kind of a cyan color, so something like this. Also don't want there to be any distance because I'm using the drop shadow to make a glow. So we're going to just put that to 0. Also want this to be as big as possible, so we're going to make that 250. And then I'm going to make a copy of this. And with each copy, I'm going to take the size down a little bit. So our last one was 250, like let's make this one 120. And then we'll do another one at 60. And also, as I get smaller, I'm also going to go a little bit less saturated and a little bit more toward white. But just make sure you stay along this top edge and don't come down here because we don't want to add any gray to it. So this is 120, 60. Let's do one at 30. And then we'll do one at 15. And just this kind of duplicated glow gives us just a nicer glow effect that exponentially grows, as opposed to trying to do it all with one single outer glow, which just doesn't give you as nice a look. So this one is 15. Let's do one final one, which will be 8, and we'll just make this one white. Okay, so pretty happy with our glow lines there. Let's also just add an outer glow. We'll make this our cyan color, and we'll just make this as big as it can be. And we'll do that. Okay. All right, so let's hit OK there. And now we want to make it look more like she's in this environment. Right now, these look very much just pasted on top. And this is where our keeping this as a smart object comes into play. Because what I can do here is I can double click, and we're going to start making some corrections in here. So first, I just want to neutralize my background. So I'm going to select my white balance and select this background. You can see that took some of that red out. Next, let's zoom out a little bit. I want to make her darker again. So we're just going to take our exposure and start pulling it back down to about where it would be for kind of this darker environment that she's in. And I also want, because the light that's hitting her is a little bit cyan, we can also push this a little bit more towards cyan, just in the temperature and the tint. Although I'm going to do a lot of that in Photoshop, so I don't want to do too much of it here. So I think in terms of camera raw, this is good. I'm going to hit OK, and you can see that kind of did the trick. She looks more the color of the background, which is what I want. Or sorry, the intensity or the luminosity of the background. Okay, next, I want to go in here. I'm going to make a copy of this just because I'm going to make corrections to her skin. That's going to require rasterizing the smart object, but I like keeping an original copy of it there. So here we're going to do rasterize. So if we right mouse click here, we can rasterize the layer. And then I'm going to option click so that the layer is isolated. And we'll go in here and just make some quick corrections. I want to make her eyes a little bit brighter. I'm going to do that by adding a layer, putting it on overlay, and then with a white soft brush, just painting under her irises. It's just a nice way of making eyes a little bit brighter, so something like this. Looks good. All right, and then back to her. we'll just take our spot healing brush, clean up some of the spots here on her skin. And let's clean up her legs as well. Here I'm just going over all the spots. And I'll kind of fast forward through this so you don't have to watch it all in real time. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Let's look at our whole image again. Okay, so now I want to add a little bit more intentional lighting on top of her. And by that I mean lighting that's influenced by the lights in the scene or artificially created light. So one thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of a highlight to her eye where it would be catching this light here. So for that, let's just make a little eye catch light. And I don't think we need to be too perfect here. I think if we just take a brush, make it small, kind of select this existing color, which is going to be way darker than you would expect. Just kind of add a little light, something like this. And then we'll add similarly this kind of color here. And I think that looks pretty good. And if we zoom out, I think that looks pretty real. We can just take down this as well so it's not as strong. So something like there. You see it, but it's not distracting. So I think that looks good. Next, we need to add some kind of highlights around where this light is getting close to her. So to do that, I'm going to add a curves layer. I want to clip it so that it's only applying to this layer. And then I'm going to make it quite a bit brighter and also go to my greens and my blues and bring those up, which is going to give me kind of a cyan lightness. So something like this. You can see that's kind of coloring my highlights all cyan. And then I'm going to invert my mask here. Actually, yeah. And then with a white brush, again, I want to use a soft brush. I'm just going to start with a low flow. So let's put this to 15. Kind of hit it, paint these highlights in. So we'll just, with a white brush, anywhere where this light is kind of in front of her. So here, on her legs here. So it's already looking much better or more real. Something like that. And then I want to also take this, and I think we can just feather this a bit. You can see our mask here. Something like that. And then I can take this, make it even brighter. And then where the light is coming from behind her, I want there to be kind of a little bit of a rear backlit glow. So to do that, I'm going to command click on my mask here and create a edge light layer. And I'm going to fill my edge light with black. And take the fill down to 0. And then I'm going to go in here and add some effects. And the difference between opacity and fill as it relates to layer styles is with my fill at 0%, The effects, all the layer styles, will still be at 100% opacity, but the original layer art will be completely transparent. And the advantage of that is I can add glows and stuff like that to this layer, but they're just acting as a glow because the layer itself is invisible. So it's a cool way to create this kind of edge light without having to paint it in entirely by hand. So here I'm going to go to my drop shadows that I made earlier. They're kind of still here. Just going to take them down a bit, maybe just have two of them. So these two here. And then I also want an inner glow or an inner shadow. So similar to the way we used a drop shadow as an outer glow, we can also use an inner shadow as an inner glow by changing our blend to screen, changing our distance to 0, and then just using the size to adjust the size of our glow. And again, I want this to be similar colored glow. First at a relatively large size, so something like this. And then a second one that is less saturated and also quite a bit smaller. So something like this. So if I'm just looking at the edges here, kind of where the light's coming from behind, I do like the way that's looking. So next thing, I want to go up to blending options and I want to turn this on, layer mask hides effects. And the reason for that is I want the layer mask to hide the edge glow. And if I don't have this turned on, the mask will just be incorporated into the transparency that the layer effect uses. So let's make sure we turn that on, hit OK, add a mask. And here I want the mask to hide everything, so I'm going to hit invert. And then with a white soft brush again, just going to go around, and anywhere where the edge glow is going behind her, I'm going to paint in this glow. And I'm going to turn my flow up to 30. And that's looking pretty good. I think we can even make it a little bit stronger here. Okay, good. Now I want to do a little bit more brightness on her face and kind of a little darkness more on her bottom. Just kind of want to focus up our lighting a bit more. So to do that, I think I'm going to add another curve here, and I'll clip this one as well so that it's just on her. And then I'm going to bring it up to where I want her face to be in terms of brightness, which I think is probably around there. But I also want a little bit more of the cyan in the shadows. So I'm going to go to red, and the opposite of red is cyan. So if I just push this down a little bit, it's going to give me that cyan in my shadows. And then because the green and blue together make cyan, so if we push those up a little bit in the highlights, keep them where they are in the darks. I can get just our highlights turning a little more cyan. So something like this. And then again, I'm going to go and invert my mask. And then I'm going to go first with a gradient, radial gradient. I'm going to start at her face and kind of go down to where her foot is. So it's mainly lighting up the top half of her like this. And then finally, I want to add a little bit of this kind of colored light into this background. So first we can go to our backdrop layer here. And first let's try just adding a little bit of this color into our background. I think probably right there is good. And then I also think we need to have our background a little bit more lit. Now, I'm going to do that, I think, with just another curves layer. So I'll go right about where she is, so something like this. And then I can add this curve. And then we'll feather it here. So something like that. And then I think I also want to just make, because this blue is pretty limited in terms of the glow, I think I want to do another glow that's just a little bit bigger than all these. So I'm going to take my glow lines. I'm going to make a copy of this layer, throw away all the effects so that it's just a layer in and of itself. And I'm going to go to filter. I'm going to rasterize the layer too. I don't need it to be a smart object anymore. I'm going to go to blur, Gaussian blur, and Gaussian blur this crazy amount, like 500 pixels, which is double what this largest one is. And then if we do Command J a few times, kind of put all these into a layer like this, and then I want to add some color to this. Now because it's white, I can't really change the color of it, but I can take my cyan color and then block or lock the transparency and then do Option Delete, and it'll fill in all those colors or all those white pixels with my color. So you can see there, it's just adding kind of a big overall glow across the whole image, which isn't bad. I don't like it in her face, so I'm just going to add a mask here and paint it out of her face. But otherwise, I think it's having a nice effect. So something like that. And then finally, let's add just a little kind of details around this. Maybe we can add a flare. So let's look at our flares. I think if I find kind of a cyan-y colored flare, so like maybe this flare 23 or this one, flare 48, are both kind of cool. And these are from my flare library. Whichever one I use, I will include in the assets. Let's use flare 23. And I'm going to put this on screen. Maybe move it to like wherever the concentrated point is. So like maybe right there. And holding down Option, I can move my anchor point so that it lines up with the center of the flare. That way when I move this up or down, it's moving it to there. So that looks interesting. These are kind of bandy. So I'm going to give the other flare a try. Put that on screen. I think that's a little more interesting. Meaning this flare, I think, is a little more interesting. So let's use this flare. Kind of like these hints of texture. So I'm going to throw away flare 23. We're going to stick with flare 48, which I'll include in the assets. Just going to add a mask and just get these little refractions here off her face. And then finally, I think I might just add a little bit of dust. So I'm going to go to my dust overlays. And I'm just going to scroll through here. Let's look at dust 15. Nah. Maybe dust 20? Nope. Dust 19? Nah. Dust 23? Nope. No. Nope. Let's use dust 34. I like this one. This will just give me a few particles in the sky or in the air. Let's make this look a little more real. Ooh, very nice. I'll do something like this. And because our light is so blue, I kind of want a little bit of that blue in this dust overlay. So I'm just going to do Command M, bring up my curves, and the opposite of red is cyan. So if I just pull the red down a bit, it's going to give me a bit of blue in there. Or sorry, a bit of cyan in there, so something like that. And then I can add a mask to this, and where it's a little bit too strong here, we'll get rid of it. I kind of like that one there, so I'm going to leave it. So something like that. And then finally we can do a few final touches in Camera Raw. So let's go ahead and add a layer at the top. We'll call this Camera Raw. I'm going to do Shift Option Command E. That'll merge everything into one layer. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. And in here we can adjust, see maybe if some of these color adjustments. Ooh, adding some warmth to it actually looks kind of cool. So let's do that. We'll add a little warmth to it. Maybe take down the exposure a tiny bit, add some contrast. I think pumping up the highlights actually looks kind of cool. Even pumping up the whites a little bit. Also want to add some sharpness. And then let's go down to color grading. Let's see if we can add a little bit of warmth to the highlights, and then a little bit more coolness to our shadows, so something like that. And then finally under effects, I like to add grain to images. Just kind of makes them feel more like they were taken with a camera. And I'm pretty happy with that. Let's hit OK. And there you have it. There's our before, and here is our after. So there you have it. That's how you recreate that composite in Photoshop and create that glow lines portrait effect, of which you can do whatever you want. Once you understand the basic techniques and methods, you can change those lines to spirals, to other shapes, to whatever you want to do. And also you can use these techniques to integrate someone into any kind of lighting situation. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, leave a like, share this video, turn on notifications, and here's some other tutorials that you can check out. You can also check out all my professional Photoshop training and tools at nucly.com, and I'll see you next time.